Let me tell you about the moment I lost a woman I thought I loved. We had been together for 2 years. 2 years of saying yes when I meant no. 2 years of apologizing for things that were not my fault. 2 years of shrinking myself so she could feel bigger. One night she pushed too far. Another test. Another manipulation. Another moment where she wanted me to beg, to chase, to prove my desperation. But something inside me had died. I looked at her, and for the first time I felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, not fear of losing her. Just empty space where my feelings used to live. And I said 6 words that changed everything. I do not need this anymore. I did not yell. I did not explain. I did not wait for her response. I simply walked to the bedroom and started packing a bag. The woman who had controlled every moment of our relationship for 2 years suddenly became someone I did not recognize. She cried. She begged. She promised to change. She became the person I had been for 24 months. That night, I learned something that took me years to fully understand. There are words that terrify women. Not insults, not cruelty, not loud, angry threats. Those she can handle. Those she expects. Those actually give her power because your emotion proves she matters. No. The words that shake a woman to her core are the quiet ones, the calm ones. The words that show her she has lost her grip on your soul. Today, I am going to share these words with you. But first, you need to understand something important. Welcome back to the Shadow Mind. Before we go further, I need to make something clear. This video is not about hurting women. This video is not about manipulation or revenge or winning some imaginary war between the sexes. This video is about self-respect. It is about the words that emerge naturally when a man finally values himself. When he stops begging for approval. When he stops fearing abandonment more than he fears losing himself. Robert Greene wrote in The 48 Laws of Power that the moment you show desperation, you give away all your leverage. Desperation is a disease that repels. People want to associate with those who are thriving, not those who are drowning. Most men are drowning, not in water, but in their need for female approval. They have been taught that a good man sacrifices everything, that a good man keeps the peace at any cost, that a good man never rocks the boat. And so they become doormats. They become furniture. They become that reliable appliance she uses but never respects. I was that man. For years, I was that man. And I am not proud of it. The words I am about to teach you are not weapons. They are medicine. You do not take medicine when you are healthy. You take it when something has gone wrong. When infection has spread. When the relationship has become toxic. These words are the cure for a disease that is killing millions of men slowly. The disease of self-abandonment. Carl Jung wrote about the shadow self. The parts of us we hide because society tells us they are unacceptable. For most men, their shadow contains something vital. Their backbone, their ability to say no, their willingness to walk away. We have been trained to suppress these things. Told they make us toxic. Told they make us dangerous. Told that real men are soft and compliant and eager to please. But Jung understood something profound. What we suppress does not disappear. It festers, it rots, and eventually it destroys us from within. The words I will share come from the shadow. They are the things every man feels but few dare to speak. And here is the paradox that most men never grasp. Women do not want you to suppress these words forever. They test you precisely because they need to know you have the strength to say them. They push your boundaries because they are searching for the wall that will not move. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote that the man who cannot command himself should obey. If you cannot command yourself, if you cannot set boundaries, if you cannot speak hard truths, then you have already submitted. Not to her, but to your own fear. These 5 statements are not attacks. They are declarations of sovereignty. They announce to her and to yourself that you are no longer a passenger in your own life. Stay with me. Take notes. And if this changes how you see yourself, subscribe to The Shadow Mind. We are building something different here. A community of men who refuse to disappear. Let us begin. Statement number 1. I am not going to argue about this. 7 words. No anger, no explanation, no negotiation. Just a calm declaration that the conversation is over. Let me explain why this terrifies her. Most men have been trained to engage. When she raises her voice, he raises his. When she brings up the past, he defends himself. When she twists his words, he tries to clarify. He believes that if he just explains himself well enough, she will finally understand. But here is what Robert Greene understood about power dynamics. The person who reacts is always controlled by the person who provokes. Every time you engage in an argument you did not start, you hand her the steering wheel of your emotions. She learns something dangerous. She learns that your peace depends on her approval. She learns that she can pull your strings anytime she wants. She learns that you are predictable, and predictability kills attraction. Niccolo Machiavelli wrote that men judge more by the eye than by the hand. They see what appears and judge what results. When you engage in endless arguments, you appear weak. Regardless of how logical your points are, she sees a man who can be baited. A man whose composure depends on her mood. But when you say, I am not going to argue about this, and you mean it, something shifts. You are not running away. You are not sulking. You are making a conscious choice about where your energy goes. You are saying this conversation does not serve either of us, and I refuse to participate. Now, let me give you the scenario. She brings up something from 3 months ago, something you already discussed, something you already apologized for. But she is in a mood, and she wants to fight. The old you would engage. You would defend yourself again. You would get frustrated that she keeps recycling old grievances. You would raise your voice because she raised hers first. The new you does something different. You look at her calmly, not with cold anger, not with dismissive contempt, just with steady self-possession. I am not going to argue about this. Then you do something that requires real strength. You stop talking. You do not explain why you will not argue. You do not justify your boundary. You simply hold it. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you have power over your mind, not outside events. When you realize this, you find strength. Your strength is not in controlling her behavior. Your strength is in controlling your response to her behavior. Here is what happens next. She will likely escalate. She will try harder to pull you into the fight. She might say you do not care. She might accuse you of shutting her out. This is the test within the test. Do not take the bait. You can say one more thing if needed. When you want to have a calm conversation, I am here, but I will not do this. Then you physically remove yourself from the situation. Not storming off, not slamming doors, just calmly going to another room or leaving the house for a walk. The first time you do this, she will not believe it. The second time, she will test harder. The third time, she will start to understand that this man has changed. And here is the psychology she experiences. For the first time, she cannot access your emotions on demand. For the first time, you have become unpredictable, and unpredictability creates fascination. Sigmund Freud studied the human need for control. When we lose control over something we thought we owned, it creates psychological distress, but it also creates renewed interest. We become obsessed with regaining what slipped away. By refusing to argue, you slip away from her emotional control. And paradoxically, this makes her want your attention more than ever. Statement number 2. Your feelings are valid, but I disagree with your conclusions. This statement is surgical. It requires intelligence to understand and courage to deliver. Let me break it down. Most relationship arguments follow a predictable pattern. She expresses a feeling. You express a different perspective. She accuses you of dismissing her feelings. You defend yourself. The original issue disappears, and now you are fighting about whether you care about her emotions. Sound familiar? This is a trap that destroys millions of men. Because once the argument shifts to whether you value her feelings, you have already lost. You are now defending your character instead of discussing the actual problem. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote about the art of controversy. He observed that most people argue to win, not to find truth. They use emotional manipulation to shift the ground beneath their opponent's feet. When she says, "You do not care how I feel," she has shifted the ground. Now, any logical point you make proves her accusation. If you stay calm, you are cold. If you get frustrated, you are aggressive. There is no winning move inside her frame. So you must create a new frame. Your feelings are valid, but I disagree with your conclusions. This statement does something powerful. It separates emotion from interpretation. It acknowledges that her feelings are real while maintaining that her story about those feelings may be wrong. Let me give you an example. She feels ignored because you spent Saturday with your friends. Her feeling is real. She genuinely felt lonely and overlooked. But her conclusion that you do not prioritize her, that you care more about your friends, that she is not important to you, those are interpretations. Those are stories she constructed around a feeling. You can validate the feeling without accepting the story. I hear that you felt ignored on Saturday. That feeling is real, and I take it seriously. But I do not agree that spending time with my friends means you are not a priority. I need my own life outside this relationship. That makes me a better partner, not a worse one. This is not dismissive. This is not cruel. This is honest. Jordan Peterson often speaks about the importance of telling the truth. He argues that lying, especially to keep peace, slowly corrupts both the liar and the relationship. When you pretend to agree with false conclusions just to end an argument, you build resentment. You lose respect for yourself. And she loses respect for you, too. The truth is harder. But the truth builds something real. Now here is why this statement creates fear in her. Most men either dismiss her feelings entirely or surrender to her conclusions completely. Both responses are predictable. Both responses she can manage. But a man who can hold two things at once, empathy for her emotion and disagreement with her interpretation, that man is different. That man cannot be easily controlled. That man requires her to actually think instead of just emote. Carl Jung wrote that thinking is difficult, which is why most people judge. When you refuse to simply judge her as wrong, but also refuse to surrender to her judgment of you, you force a different kind of conversation, a harder conversation, a more honest one. She fears this because it removes her easy escape routes. She cannot accuse you of not caring because you validated her feeling. She cannot claim victory because you maintained your position. She is forced to engage with the actual substance of the disagreement. And here is the deeper fear. She realizes you see through the game, not with contempt, not with anger, but with clarity. You understand the difference between feeling and conclusion. You will not be manipulated by the conflation of the two. That clarity is rare, and rare things command respect. Statement number 3. I would rather be alone than be with someone who treats me this way. This is the nuclear statement, the one that reaches into her deepest fears and holds them up to the light. But before I explain why this works, I need to tell you something important. You must mean it. If you say these words as a tactic, as a bluff to scare her into behaving better, she will sense the lie, and you will lose all credibility. This statement only works when it comes from a place of genuine self-worth. When you have reached a point where your peace matters more than her presence, let me explain the psychology. Robert Greene wrote about the law of scarcity in human desire. We want what we cannot easily have. We value what might disappear. The moment something becomes guaranteed, we begin to take it for granted. Most men in relationships have communicated one thing clearly through their behavior. I will never leave. No matter what you do, no matter how you treat me, I am here forever. This sounds romantic. It sounds loyal. It sounds like what a good man should feel. But it destroys attraction. Because when she knows you will never leave, she has no reason to value your presence. You have removed all scarcity. You have announced that your commitment is unconditional, which means her behavior has no consequences. Thomas Hobbes wrote that the value of a man is his price. That is to say, so much as would be given for the use of his power. Your value in a relationship is directly connected to your willingness to withdraw. Not as manipulation, but as genuine self-respect. When you say, I would rather be alone than be with someone who treats me this way, you are reintroducing scarcity. You are announcing that your presence is not guaranteed, that it must be earned through respect. Now let me give you the scenario. The relationship has become toxic. She speaks to you with contempt. She dismisses your needs while demanding you prioritize hers. She has stopped seeing you as a partner and started treating you as a servant. You have tried communication. You have tried patience. You have tried understanding her perspective. Nothing has changed. Because why would it? You have shown that you will accept any treatment. One evening, she crosses a line. Maybe she insults you in front of others. Maybe she dismisses something important to you with cruel indifference. Maybe she threatens the relationship as a manipulation tactic. This is your moment. You do not yell. You do not cry. You do not beg her to treat you better. You look at her with calm clarity. I would rather be alone than be with someone who treats me this way. Then you stop talking. This is crucial. Do not explain further. Do not list her offenses. Do not give her ammunition to argue against. Just let the statement exist in the space between you. Epictetus taught that we cannot control external events, only our response to them. You cannot control how she treats you, but you can control whether you accept that treatment. This statement announces your choice. Here is what she experiences. Her entire framework has been built on your fear of losing her. Every manipulation, every test, every moment of disrespect was possible because she believed you would never walk away. In one sentence, you have shattered that belief. Suddenly, she must confront a terrifying possibility. What if he actually leaves? What if my behavior has consequences? What if I have pushed too far? This is not cruelty. This is honesty. You are simply stating a truth that should have been obvious from the beginning. That your self-respect has limits. That your tolerance is not infinite. That you are a man with options, not a prisoner with none. Now, here is something most men do not understand. She does not want you to have infinite tolerance. Deep down, in a place she may not consciously access, she wants to know that you have a breaking point. She wants to know that she chose a man with enough self-worth to demand respect. When you demonstrate that breaking point, you do not destroy her attraction. You rebuild it. Because finally, after all this time, she is standing in front of a man she cannot take for granted. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote that the man who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises. Even self-hatred contains a kernel of self-recognition. But the man who allows others to treat him with contempt has lost even that kernel. He has become nothing, even to himself. When you refuse to accept mistreatment, you announce that you still exist, that there is still a self worth protecting, that you have not disappeared entirely into the role of her emotional servant. And that man, the one who still exists, is the one she fell for in the beginning. Statement number 4. I am not responsible for managing your emotions. This statement cuts through one of the most destructive patterns in modern relationships. The unspoken belief that her emotional state is your job to maintain. Let me be clear about what I mean. Supporting your partner through difficult times is part of love. Being present when she struggles, listening when she needs to talk, offering comfort when she is in pain, these are good things. These are what caring people do. But there is a difference between support and responsibility. Support means I am here with you while you navigate your feelings. Responsibility means I must fix your feelings, prevent your bad moods, and ensure you are always happy. The first is sustainable. The second is impossible. Carl Jung wrote extensively about projection, the psychological phenomenon where we place our internal struggles onto external objects. When a woman makes you responsible for her emotions, she is projecting her internal work onto you. She is saying, my feelings are your problem to solve. This creates an impossible situation. You become a hostage to her mood. If she is unhappy, it is your failure. If she is anxious, you should have prevented it. If she is angry, you must have caused it. Your entire existence becomes organized around managing her internal weather. And here is the trap. You can never succeed because her emotions are not actually about you. They come from her history, her trauma, her interpretations, her brain chemistry. You are at best a small factor in a complex equation. But when you accept total responsibility, you accept total blame. You start walking on eggshells. You start monitoring her face for signs of storms. You start abandoning your own needs to prevent her discomfort. Sigmund Freud understood that we often recreate our earliest relationships in adult life. If she learned as a child that others should manage her feelings, she will seek partners who accept that role. And if you learn that your value depends on keeping others happy, you will volunteer for the job. Two broken patterns finding each other. Two people locked in a dance that serves neither. When you say, I am not responsible for managing your emotions, you break the pattern. Now, let me give you the scenario. She comes home in a bad mood. You ask what is wrong. She snaps at you. You try to help. She pushes you away while simultaneously blaming you for not helping correctly. Nothing you do is right. Your presence is wrong. Your absence is wrong. Your suggestions are wrong. Your silence is wrong. This is the trap closing. The old you would try harder, would apologize for things you did not do, would twist yourself into shapes, trying to find the magic formula that fixes her mood. The new you recognizes the game. I can see you are going through something. I am here if you want support. But I am not responsible for managing your emotions. That is your work to do. This is not cold. This is not abandonment. This is the most loving thing you can say. Because you are telling her the truth. You are treating her as an adult capable of handling her own internal experience. You are refusing to participate in a dynamic that helps neither of you. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that compassion is the basis of morality. True compassion does not mean absorbing another person's suffering. It means recognizing their struggle while allowing them the dignity of their own journey. When you refuse to manage her emotions, you give her that dignity. You say, "I believe you are strong enough to handle your own feelings. I will not treat you as fragile by taking over your inner life." Here is what she experiences. At first, resistance. Maybe anger that you are not playing the role she assigned you. Maybe accusations that you do not care. But underneath that, something else. Relief. Because the expectation that someone else should manage her emotions is exhausting for her too. She knows deep down that it is not working, that no amount of your effort will actually fix what lives inside her. When you step back, you create space. Space for her to develop her own emotional resilience. Space for genuine support instead of codependent management. Space for two adults to exist together without one absorbing the other. That space is where healthy relationships live. Statement number 5. I have already made my decision. 5 words that close every door she thought she could push open. This statement is about finality, about the power of a man who knows his own mind and does not require her approval to act on it. Let me explain why this creates such deep psychological impact. Most men in relationships have been trained to seek consensus. They present their ideas as suggestions. They wait for permission. They frame their desires as questions. Do you think I should? Would you be okay if? What if we may be considered? This sounds collaborative. It sounds respectful. It sounds like equality. But here is what Robert Greene observed about power dynamics. Those who ask for permission position themselves as subordinates. The act of asking announces that someone else holds authority over your choices. Over time, this pattern creates a specific reality. She becomes the gatekeeper of your life. Every decision must pass through her approval. Every action requires her blessing. You have voluntarily installed her as the authority over your existence. And here is the paradox that destroys men. She did not want that power. She was looking for a partner, not a child who needs permission to live. When you handed her authority over your choices, you forced her into a role that kills her attraction to you. Machiavelli wrote that it is better to be impetuous than cautious. Those who hesitate, who wait for perfect conditions, who seek approval before acting, lose more than they gain. The man who acts decisively may sometimes fail, but he commands respect. The man who waits for permission succeeds at nothing except avoiding blame. When you say, "I have already made my decision," you announce something profound. You are telling her that you have an internal guidance system, that you are capable of determining what is right for your life without external validation, that you are a man who acts, not a man who asks. Now let me give you the scenario. You have decided something important. Maybe it is a career change. Maybe it is a financial investment. Maybe it is setting aside time for something that matters to you. Maybe it is ending a pattern in the relationship that has become toxic. The old pattern would be to present this as a proposal, to explain your reasoning, to wait for her feedback, to modify your position based on her objections, to eventually either abandon your decision or implement it with her reluctant permission. The new pattern is different. You have thought it through. You have considered the implications. You have made your choice. Then you inform her. Not ask. Inform. I have decided to take this new position. It will mean some changes for us, and I wanted you to know. She may object. She may question. She may express concerns. You can listen. You can acknowledge. You can even adjust details if her input reveals something you missed. But the core decision stands. Because you made it. Because you are capable of governing your own life. Marcus Aurelius wrote that a man should be upright, not kept upright. You should stand straight, because that is who you are, not because someone else is propping you up. When you make decisions and hold them, you demonstrate that you can stand without her support. Here is what she experiences. First, perhaps frustration. She has grown accustomed to being consulted on everything. Your sudden self-direction disrupts her expectation, but underneath that frustration, something else awakens. Respect, because she is now looking at a man who knows himself. A man who can chart his own course. A man who does not dissolve into uncertainty when challenged. Carl Jung wrote about the process of individuation. Becoming fully yourself. A man who cannot make decisions without female approval has not individuated. He remains a boy waiting for mother to tell him what to do. When you demonstrate the ability to decide, you complete a psychological journey. You become the man she was hoping you would be. Now here is something critical. This does not mean you ignore her input on everything. This does not mean you become a dictator who disregards her needs. This is not about domination. This is about capability. About showing that when necessary, you can lead. You can choose. You can act without requiring her permission to exist. The strongest relationships are between two complete people. Two people who could each survive alone but choose to be together. When you demonstrate your ability to decide, you show her that you are complete. That you are with her by choice, not dependency. And that choice, freely made by a man who could walk his own path, is worth more than the clinging of a man who has nowhere else to go. Now, let me pull back and show you the larger pattern. Every statement I have shared today has one thing in common. They all demonstrate psychological separation. Not separation from her. Separation of your identity from her approval. This is the key that unlocks everything. Sigmund Freud wrote about the ego's need to distinguish itself from others, to know where I end and you begin. Without this boundary, the ego dissolves. The self becomes confused, enmeshed, lost. Most men in relationships have lost their boundaries. They no longer know where they end and she begins. Her moods become their moods. Her opinions become their opinions. Her approval becomes their oxygen. This is not love. This is fusion. And fusion is the death of attraction. Here is what most men never understand about female psychology. She cannot desire what she has consumed. If you have been fully absorbed into her world, if there is no separation between you, there is nothing left to want. You have become part of her, like an arm or a leg. Useful, perhaps, but not desirable. Desire requires distance. Mystery requires separation. Attraction requires two distinct beings with space between them. Robert Greene wrote that absence diminishes small passions but inflames great ones. The ability to be absent, psychologically if not physically, is essential for maintaining desire. When you are always available, always agreeable, always present in exactly the way she expects, you become invisible. The 5 statements I have given you today create distance, not emotional coldness, not cruelty, just the healthy space that reminds her you are a separate person with your own thoughts, boundaries, needs, and decisions. This space is not a rejection of her. It is an invitation. You are saying, "Come know me. I am not just a reflection of your desires. I am a whole person with depths you have not explored. There is something here worth discovering." Arthur Schopenhauer wrote about the nature of desire. He observed, that we desire what we do not fully possess. The moment something is completely ours, the desire fades. Only through distance can desire be maintained. When you maintain your separateness, you can never be fully possessed. There will always be something about you that she is still reaching for, something that keeps her curiosity alive. Now, here is the most important part. These statements are not techniques to deploy strategically. They are not tricks to manipulate her attraction. They are expressions of a genuine inner reality. If you do not actually have boundaries, saying you have them will not work. If you have not actually done the inner work to know your own mind, claiming decisiveness will ring hollow. If you secretly believe you need her approval to exist, she will sense that truth beneath your words. The words only work when they reflect reality. Jordan Peterson often speaks about the importance of sorting yourself out, of getting your own house in order before attempting to change the world. The same applies here. Before you can speak these statements authentically, you must become the man who genuinely holds these positions. That is the real work. Not memorizing phrases, but building an internal foundation of self-respect so solid that these words emerge naturally, because they are simply the truth of who you have become. Epictetus taught that we suffer not from events, but from our judgments about events. When you stop judging your worth based on her reactions, you stop suffering from her moods. When you stop needing her approval, you stop fearing her disapproval. And from that place of freedom, genuine love becomes possible. Not needy love that clings, not desperate love that begs, but the love of two complete people who choose each other freely, without fear, without fusion, without losing themselves in the process. That is what these statements point toward. Not manipulation, not warfare, but freedom for both of you. Let me tell you what happened after that night I mentioned at the beginning. After I said those 6 words, after I started packing, after she begged and promised to change, I left anyway. Not because I wanted to punish her, not because I stopped caring, but because I had finally started caring about myself. And I knew that words spoken in panic rarely survive the morning. I spent 3 months alone. The hardest and most important 3 months of my life. In that solitude, I discovered something terrifying. I did not know who I was without her. My opinions had become her opinions. My schedule had been organized around her moods. My dreams had shrunk to fit inside her comfort zone. I had disappeared, and I had not even noticed it happening. Friedrich Nietzsche wrote that no one can build you the bridge on which you, and only you, must cross the river of life. I had been waiting for her to build my bridge, waiting for her permission to cross, waiting for her approval to become myself. That waiting was over. I started rebuilding, not the relationship, myself. I reconnected with friends I had abandoned. I pursued interests I had forgotten. I sat with my own thoughts without needing distraction. I learned to be comfortable in my own company. And something strange happened. The fear dissolved. The desperate need for her approval that had driven every decision for years simply evaporated. Not because I stopped caring about connection, but because I finally understood that my worth did not depend on being chosen by someone else. Carl Jung wrote that the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Those months alone, I claimed that privilege. I met myself for the first time in years, and I liked who I found. When she eventually contacted me, something had shifted. Not in her, in me. I could hear her words without my stomach tightening. I could consider her requests without fear of disappointing her. I could say no without feeling like I was committing a crime. She noticed immediately, and she was terrified. Not because I was cruel. I was not. not because I was cold. I was warmer than before, actually. She was terrified because she could no longer control me, because for the first time she was talking to a man who did not need her. We did not get back together. That was my choice, because I realized that the relationship had been built on my weakness, and a structure built on a rotten foundation cannot be saved by repainting the walls. But I am grateful for what she taught me, grateful for the pain that finally woke me up, grateful for hitting bottom hard enough that I had no choice but to rebuild. Now let me share something that most men never understand. The statements I taught you today are not about controlling women. They are about reclaiming yourself. When you refuse to argue pointlessly, you are honoring your own peace. When you separate her feelings from her conclusions, you are maintaining your own clarity. When you declare that you would rather be alone than mistreated, you are defending your own dignity. When you refuse to manage her emotions, you are preserving your own sanity. When you make decisions without requiring permission, you are exercising your own sovereignty. These are not weapons against her. They are walls around your soul. Walls that should have been there from the beginning. Walls that healthy people build naturally. Robert Greene wrote that you must seem like a peer, never the inferior or the superior. In relationships, this means neither dominating nor submitting, neither controlling her nor being controlled by her. Standing as equals, each with your own boundaries, your own needs, your own identity. This is not what modern culture teaches men. Modern culture says you should be soft. You should accommodate endlessly. You should prioritize her comfort above your existence. And millions of men have followed that advice straight into depression, anxiety, and quiet desperation. They have loved themselves into oblivion, given until nothing remained to give, and been discarded anyway, because emptiness cannot be loved. Plato wrote about the nature of the soul. He believed it had multiple parts that must be kept in harmony. When you abandon yourself for another person, you shatter that harmony. You become fragmented, confused, lost. The path back to wholeness requires reclaiming what you surrendered. It requires learning to say no. It requires accepting that some people will not like the real you, and understanding that this is acceptable. It requires building a life that would be complete, even if she left tomorrow. This is not selfishness. This is the foundation of genuine love, because you cannot give what you do not have. A man with no self cannot offer himself to a partner. He can only offer his desperation, his neediness, his endless hunger for validation. But a man who has done the work, who knows who he is, who stands firm in his own identity, that man can love freely. He can give without losing himself. He can merge without dissolving. Arthur Schopenhauer wrote that a man can be himself only so long as he is alone. There is truth in that. Solitude is where we meet ourselves. But I believe the greater challenge is remaining yourself while being with another. That is the real test. And the statements I shared today are tools for passing it. So where do you go from here? I want you to understand something clearly. This video is not a magic spell. You cannot simply memorize these phrases and expect your life to change. The words mean nothing without the transformation behind them. If you say, "I would rather be alone," while secretly terrified of solitude, she will sense the lie. If you claim to have made a decision while waiting for her approval, your weakness will show. If you refuse to argue while seething with unexpressed rage, the truth will surface eventually. The work is internal. It is learning to sit with discomfort without running to distraction. It is building a life that genuinely fulfills you outside of any relationship. It is developing the self-respect that makes these statements natural instead of forced. Jordan Peterson often says that you should compare yourself to who you were yesterday, not to who someone else is today. That is your path forward, not measuring yourself against some ideal of masculinity, but becoming slightly more yourself each day. Start small. The next time you feel the urge to apologize for something that was not your fault, pause. Notice the impulse. Ask yourself where it comes from. The next time you feel yourself shrinking to accommodate her mood, pause. Feel the contraction in your chest. Ask yourself if this is who you want to be. The next time you are about to abandon your plans because she expressed displeasure, pause. Consider whether her comfort is worth your integrity. These small moments are where change happens, not in grand gestures, in the tiny choices that accumulate into a new identity. Marcus Aurelius wrote that very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking. Your happiness, your peace, your sense of worth, these cannot be given to you by another person. They must be built from within. That is the journey I am inviting you to take. Not a journey away from love. A journey toward the kind of love that only two complete people can share. If this video has shifted something in your thinking, subscribe to The Shadow Mind. Every video here is designed to take you deeper into understanding yourself and others. Not through tricks, through truth. Leave a comment below. Tell me which statement resonated most with you. Tell me where you are in your own journey. This community is built on men helping men become who they were meant to be. And remember this, she does not fear your words. She fears the man behind them, the man who knows his own mind, the man who guards his own peace, the man who would rather stand alone than kneel beside someone who does not respect him. Become that man, not for her, for yourself, and watch everything change. I will see you in the next video.